Hey guys, can we put our hands together for Michael, please? Michael, pair of papers. Michael, thank you.
I'm going to start out by saying thanks, and pretty much keep saying it all night, so get used to it. First, start with Fred Pulsnell, and him and me really put this together, and every group in the city pitched in. Got the .orgs and the .coms and the .edus. Everybody's here. And the other person's here. Another person here is the artist Jacob Wheeler. Buy a piece, and if you do, he'll give $50 to Norml. Okay? And he's here, so if you want to speak to him.
He's right here.
Yep.
Put your hand up.
He's easy to find. Thank you so much. Forml.
We're at a historic moment when the FDA is finally taking the steps to make the moves to legalize hemp, well actually more regulate the use of hemp because the Farm Bill already legalized it. So at this point, what the issue is that the FDA is saying that CBD and THC and some of these other compounds are currently already drugs, and under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, that's restricting their access. Luckily, this hearing is the first step in the HHS, which is the Human Health Services, which is a cabinet secretary's position. Basically, that the FDA and them will work together to figure out what this pathway for CBD will be. And while I think that CBD is important, that there's other things that we need to be focusing on. There's CBG, there's CBN, and there's Delta 8 THC, and all of these compounds don't have the hang-ups that CBD currently does with the drug approvals. And so I think that we should start looking at some of these other compounds and ways that we can move forward. And that's something that we're going to be recommending to the FDA when we're there, is that they start looking at some of these other compounds instead of relying completely on CBD. And I think that's something the industry as well needs to be focusing on. And then, of course, True Terpenes is a terpene company. And if you think of cannabinoids as a gas pill that are driving these effects, terpenes are what's steering you and driving the experience and creating a complete entourage effect of experiences. And so recently, the TTB, I'm not sure how many people know them, but they regulate what can be used in alcoholic beverages. And they're basically saying now that you cannot use hemp terpenes, even though it's legal for possession in alcoholic substances or in food. So we're also going to be pushing the FDA and the TTB to allow hemp terpenes to be used in food as well as alcohol, because currently those same compounds, linalool is in lavender, beta-caryophyllene is in clove, myrcene is in hops. All of these compounds are used already. They're already generally regarded as safe compounds. They're already food additives. There's no reason why the source from hemp should change any amount of safety data. So it's really important that we, while we focus on CBD, that we start looking again at these compounds beyond cannabinoids, terpenes that can come from this plant. And those are the directions that we need to go. And so I hope that everyone else here will also take the time to write the FDA, because they're accepting public comments, so you can all have a voice. We'll all be there speaking. You also have your voice, and it's important that everyone reaches out, because you all have a different opinion, and you all have a different piece of evidence that may in some way touch the FDA's guidance. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to the next person to speak.
Everybody who's excited to be here, throw up your hands. Put your hands up in the air. See, that's the last thing everybody heard before the police came in and raided every party before the modern era, And it's kind of interesting, I've been doing this for long enough, about 25 years, which is a fairly short time in this movement as compared to others, to say that we all know how this all got started, which it got started with racism and political suppression, and that was the origin of how this got started, and it ended up culminating in the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. That Schedule I status, which cannabis never belonged in, was used as a tool to oppress, and we know that from Ehrlichman, who was Nixon's advisor, who basically said that we were going to use marijuana to vilify both blacks and hippies night after night on the nightly news, and to be able to vilify them and break up their communities and arrest their leaders. And he says, ultimately, did we know we were about lying about the drugs? Of course we did. And it's a lie. But I got to say, there was a group of people that stood up to that lie and decided to bring some truth to it. And that was Norml. That's what we're here to celebrate, because they had the courage back in 1970 to get together and tell the government, you're wrong. And not only you're wrong, they're going to take them to court where Judge Young, an administrative law judge, said this doesn't belong there. Other commissions, the Schaefer Commission, said this doesn't belong there. But nonetheless, we are oppressed, and we are that. And so we owe a lot of tonight and what we're all celebrating to have an actual expo in New York City, the most important city in this country and one of the most important players in the world, We owe a bit of gratitude to Norml and Keith Strout for founding it, and we owe a debt of gratitude to High Times and Michael Kennedy and Tom Prasad for having the bravery to write about it and to exercise their right and say something about how wrong this was. Steve Bloom, who's here tonight, a hand out to him because he stood up to this fight too, and all of a sudden we are here and we are talking about legalization. And legalization is where it's at and what it's about. And important to that whole movement is the social equity movement. You know, this is what matters now, is that we all know that this was a tool to rip people out of their communities, to drown their infrastructure in overregulation, and persecute those who just wanted to enjoy a simple, non-lethal and non-harmful drug. And they paid a humongous price, and particularly people of color. So the debate now is really all about that, which is how to bring social equity back. And you've heard a lot of people talk about it, and there needs to be funds to help with education, but there's a lot more that can happen on the grassroots level, and I hope you all embrace it as we all move forward with this, because you need to go out and you need to find about economic opportunity zones and what qualifies and who qualifies, and you need to sit down with your town boards and your school boards and your parental organizations and say, this is where a benefit could come to us tomorrow if you only listen to us today. And it's about today. And so I'm very proud to be here in the company of these great people and this great organization. And I thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Hemp has taken completely over my life, so I am no longer serving on the board for Norml. I support Norml as a dedicated member. The Norml website, this one-stop shop that Norml has created at norml.org, again, Norml.org, is invaluable to the cannabis movement. You can go there to discover every state law. You can just click on state laws. You can find out if there is a Norml chapter to plug into. And well, everyone is looking for a place to belong. We need to be living purpose-driven lives. And so when I go around the country and speak and I say, listen, if you are looking for purpose, let cannabis and the cannabis movements be your purpose. Plug into Norml. You love marijuana. You love all forms of cannabis. You love personal freedom, civil rights, social justice. Plug into Norml. That website can open an entire world for people. Also, of course, attorneys. Many, many facts, blogs, fact sheets, myth-busting fact sheets, all of these are available at norml.org. And I hope that everyone here tonight, if you're not already using the site or aware of the site, that you will investigate it and avail yourselves of the tremendous tools. My understanding is that there are some 400 law students a year trying to get internships and so on and so forth with the national office. Norml is based in DC, maintains quite a presence there, and has actually formed the Cannabis Caucus, the very effective Cannabis Caucus that we recognize in the U.S. Congress. And these interns are fighting for a very few coveted spots. And it's these lawyers, these law school students, along with the staff, that continues to update this most robust source of legal information, laws, penalties, and developments around cannabis. Now I'm going to talk about hemp a little bit, guys. So New York State, we have one of the most robust hemp programs in the country. We have been growing hemp even before the 2018 Farm Bill. We started our agricultural pilot program here as a result of the 2014 Farm Bill. As you may know, there are bills making their way at the last minute here through the legislature, and it's kind of fascinating the way the state is wanting to deal with CBD and hemp extracts, all of hemp extracts. And David, as much as I would love for them to just deal with hemp extracts, they're very focused on CBD. But having said that, here in New York, they are trying to protect the use of hemp-derived CBD and hemp extracts in dietary supplements by beholding all of us to the Code of Federal Regulations for dietary supplements. Now, many folks think in the hemp industry, folks coming in, that the FDA simply doesn't regulate hemp extract. Well, they do regulate dietary supplements, and they do regulate food and beverages and cosmetics, And as the president of the Hemp Industries Association, formed in 1994, our message is if you are engaged in those businesses, you are regulated and you need to follow those regulations to ensure safety and quality and to continue to build our industry. It's folks who are not paying attention to safety and quality and are turning a blind eye to these regulations that give the hemp extract and CBD industry a bad name.
My experience with cannabis began way back in the day when you really could find things like Oaxacan and Panama Red and like the Kona buds and like real strains around that no one really sees anymore. Maui Wowie. But that was when I began to study cannabis. And that was like Nancy Reagan and Just Say No, and you went to a party and you were stigmatized and you were like paranoid of being stoned, right? You're like, oh shit, people are like gonna know I'm stoned. Now you go to a party and people want to like know where the weed is, right? They're like, where's the pot? But when I went to law school, my mother had compelled me after college to do something. And I told her I wanted to be a mafia lawyer, so I'm gonna go be a mafia lawyer. And she said to me without skipping a beat, go to Brooklyn Law School. The best mafia lawyers went to Brooklyn Law School. And she named a whole bunch, and I applied to Brooklyn and I got in. And it was like the beginning of an extraordinary journey for me. When I got out, one of the first things I did was join Norml as a lawyer, as a member of the National Legal Committee, a lifetime member of the National Legal Committee. And what that meant was, it was like a young, like the stunt lawyer, right? So they deployed you places. I went to North Carolina on behalf of the Norml Foundation in 1997 or 8 to represent an activist. If any of you know the history, and I don't expect you to, but the history of cannabis in America, named Jean Marlowe. Has anyone in the room even heard of Jean Marlowe, right? Rock on. And we were in front of a judge whose name was Lacey Thornburg III. I was met at the airport by my co-counsel who had on like sandals, and there were people with placards, and there were like people with Rwanas and guitars, right? And I was like, the New York lawyer going to save Jean Marlowe. I hadn't met her. She was facing time in prison under federal law because she had received kilos of marijuana, like 5 of them, from Switzerland, to give to cancer patients and a little bit to herself too, right? So she's facing like 24 to 30 months under the federal guidelines. I'm in front of Judge Thornburg, and I got the Rwanda people out there, and the guitars and the placards and the steps. And the first thing that I saw when I saw Jean Marlowe was that she reminded me of my mother. And it could have been my mother that was standing in court facing federal time for giving cannabis to people who were in pain, palliative pain, end-of-life pain, that had every right to use cannabis. And I remember saying to this judge in North Carolina, I used what we call Kohlberg stages of moral reasoning. You know, like if the pharmacist had the drug and you couldn't afford it and that's all you could do to save your wife's life, would you steal the drug? And the judge said, well, I don't really buy Kohlberg's stages of moral reasoning, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give your client probation. I'm going to downwardly depart from the then mandatory guidelines and save her from imprisonment. And I saved Jean Marlowe from prison.